Hello, family and friends. This is MG, and welcome to the Reimagine New Lab podcast. And I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. I have to say, you guys have been absolutely phenomenal because this has been an exceptional year. We have moved into year number 2. And I just have to thank y'all because who knew we were moving into a second year and the show has taken off? And I just have to thank you guys for tuning in, for listening, for sharing, for viewing, for downloading. And hey, I didn't know it was going to happen like that, but I just have to say thank you. So thank you guys very much. If you have not already subscribed, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. Please, because the reason I say that is because every Friday we download a new show and you are always going to be entertained, blessed. You're going to learn something, grab some tips. You're going to get something because the people that come into the lab are absolutely phenomenal. As a matter of fact, that's a prerequisite to even come on the show. So thank you guys again for tuning in. And thank you so much for sharing this with your friends, your family, your faith community, your colleagues, and your neighbors. I appreciate you all very much. So, without any further ado, I've got to introduce you to the young woman who is in the lab today. Camisha Williams, how are you?
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I am absolutely fantastic. Hang on, let me get you all the way in here today. How are you, girl? Look, I'm so glad you up in here today. Thank you for saying yes and coming to the lab. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. Now listen, now Camisha, now you know this is how we do. You said you done listen to some shows. So because of that, you know that we're going to go beyond the bio. So this is the time when you tell them who you are, what you do, where you at, and how you do what you do. Do you mind?
No, I don't mind at all.
The floor is yours.
Okay. First, I want to say congratulations on 2 years.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me today. So let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Camisha Williams. I am originally from Miami, Florida. I attended school at Miami Norland Senior High School, and I am a graduate of Miami Norland. After Norland, I went to Miami-Dade Community College, where I earned an associate's degree in criminal justice. After that, I transferred to Grambling State University,
Hey,
the
hey.
Grambling State University in Grambling, Louisiana. And I earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. After that, I moved back home to Miami. And my first job, my first real job, that's what I call it. My first,
A real job.
real
What was your
job.
first real job, girl?
After earning my degree, I worked at Department of Juvenile Justice in Broward County. I was a community youth leader. So I was pretty much like a youth probation officer, just ensuring that the kids reported in when necessary, taking them to court, and things like that. So after that, my next job was an internship with the Department of Defense, specifically the Air Force.
Okay.
And so that was in California, Edwards Air Force Base, California. So I left Miami and moved to California, and I did an internship. Like I said, it was a 2-year program, and I learned about security administration. So I learned all aspects of security. And after that, I moved to Washington, D.C.,
Okay.
Bowling Air Force Base in Washington, D.C., and I was there for many, many years. So the DMV, I still call that home. Washington,
Yeah.
D.C., Maryland, Virginia.
Virginia. Okay.
And then in 2011, I moved to Kansas City, Missouri, where I now work for the Federal Aviation Administration, and I am still in security administration. So that is my security path. My hobbies, though, I do like spending time with my family. I'm married. I have two biological children and two bonus children. And then I also like to give back to the community, active in church. Um, I work a lot with the youth, and I also work at the FAA in the youth program that they have. It's called STEM, Aviation Education. So, STEM,
Mhm.
of course, stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we pretty much go around to the local community, so the local
Mhm.
Kansas City, Missouri area, and we tell children about the world of aviation and try to get them involved in aviation field. So I love working with the youth, and those are some things about me.
Yay. Well, I love it. I love it, Camisha. Now, you done told us a lot about you, which I absolutely love. You're an amazing young lady. Now, one of the things that is really big, you got amazing family too. Like, just, I want you guys to know, listening audience, Camisha is an amazing talent, beautiful family. Listen, but Camisha, you did not share with them like some amazing news of this new thing that you are doing. Now, you know, when you come into the lab, we always talking about change and like the new stuff that we doing is something completely different. So I'm going to ask you about this new thing that you're doing that's completely independent of work, completely independent of community, but it's going to be for the community and for others. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, so I have written a book. It's going to be a children's book, and
Yes.
it is about how to deal with death and going through grief. And it's
Yes.
going to be a children's book geared to children. It kind of helps start that conversation, um,
Yes.
that much needed conversation when you lose a loved one. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. It's good. It's life's endings brings new beginnings. Right.
Yeah,
That's the name of the book. And Kamisha, I'll tell you, when I read it, I was like, when I read the story, I thought this is good. It's a good story. It's sound. It's, it's solid. And a lot of times people aren't necessarily sharing, stories about grief and loss and how do children deal with grief? How do children deal with grief and loss? It's hard for adults. Do you it's one of those things that everybody's not necessarily ready for, if I can just be honest and transparent. Everybody's not necessarily ready. So talk us through a little bit how you came to write the story yourself. I know part of this is your own story that you're even sharing.
yeah. So this book, of course, is loosely based off of some things that I went through in my life, and I'll just go ahead and share. Um,
Yeah.
how what happened in my life. This is my testimony here.
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
so I got married in 1998 to my husband. He was from Miami as well, and so we had our first child in 2001. Shout out to Reggie.
Yes, Reggie. And Reggie is a college grad. Reggie graduated this year.
Yes, yes, my son is 22 years old now. And so me and my husband, we hit a rough patch in 2006, and we decided to separate and end up filing for divorce. And then my husband, he went back to Miami in 2007 and to spend time with his family and everything, kind of figure out our separation, our divorce, and everything. Um, and so in Virginia, it was just me and Reggie. And in 2008, I received a phone call that my husband had passed away. And that was pretty devastating. Um,
Yeah, that's
so,
hard news.
yeah, it was. And so just to kind of let you know, I was about 34 years old at the time, and my son was 6 years old at the time.
Mhm.
So that was the age difference. And back home they were saying, well, nothing can start. We can't start the process until you get here. So I pretty much
Mm,
had to shut everything down in Virginia and head over to Miami and just deal with that, prepare for the funeral and everything. But of course, before then, I had to tell my son that his dad passed away. And that
yeah,
was pretty much one of the hardest things that I ever had to do.
yeah,
Um, so yeah. So I can just remember I had to share with him that I have some sad news to tell you about your dad.
yeah,
And we just hugged each other really tight. You know how as a parent, when you have young ones
mm-hmm.
and they're scared and fearful,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of jump on you and kind of
Yeah,
hug you real tight, where
yeah,
it's like they want to jump inside of you. And that's
yeah,
much how we were hugging on to each other when, I shared the news with him. And I just reassured him that his dad loved him, I
yeah,
love him, and that we were going to get through this together. So,
yeah. No, that Camisha, that's a lot to take in, and then to be able to share to it with a 6-year-old,
yeah,
and getting them to understand life is about to be, it's going to be different. You know, we won't be able to see dad and hang out with dad and experience dad in the ways that sons and dads deal with each other. Hang out and
yeah.
those things. So that was different. Wow, that's powerful, girl. Listen, mm, excuse me, excuse me. Give us a moment here.
Oh my
No, and
God.
you know what? And thank you for sharing your story. That's a hard thing to deal and share over again. Like, 'cause I'm sure sometimes that feels like it takes you back when you remembering. You
Yeah,
know. So Kamisha, so you wrote the book, to share, with other parents, because and I imagine part of that is because hey, there was an experience that you had with this, and now you're helping other parents to deal with this as well. So talk us through a little bit what kind of how you want, or how you want the book to be able to be help to other parents, that when they read the story, or kind of what it can help them to experience and do.
yeah. So as a young mother, I would always read to my son.
Mhm.
Um, it's different things that we may be going through.
Mhm.
We would go and find a book in
Mhm.
relation to it, and then we would just read it over and over again. And I remember when I was going through this, I went to look for a book about people losing loved ones and dealing with grief, but specifically for children. And I wasn't able to find anything. And so I was just led by God that, hey, I want you to write a book.
Yeah, yeah, necessity is the mother of
Yeah.
invention, right? We create, if it's not there, we create it. We create it.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. And so
no,
that's what was done. Yes.
no, I love that. I love the fact that, especially like hearing your background too. You worked in the juvenile court working with kids. You probably have seen some kids go through some very traumatic things in their lives, working with them in that
Yeah.
way. And all the way up until this day, you still working, like still working with kids, even in the STEM program, and helping them to see a path, a future that they could create that maybe they hadn't seen. And so I see this very much being very much a part of who Camisha is, and saying, hey, here's a way that this could be something that can help you, that can be a benefit to you, not just to the kids, but even to the parents. So Camisha, kind of take us through when you were kind of putting the story and everything together and kind of sharing. One of the things that I love was that losses sometimes, it is, and look, and we don't want to tell everybody everything that's in the story, because we want to make sure that people get a copy of the book, and you'll be able to go and you can pre-order. You can actually go to CamishaWilliams.com, and we will have all the details in the show notes. And so you can make sure that you go over there and you can get it, you can pre-order you a copy of the book. But I like how you, like, there was loss of, there was different kinds of loss that was experienced in the book. I like that. What made you kind of go that way like that?
Well, while I was going through this, of course, when you're going through the grieving process, there are different stages that you go through. So
Mhm.
we definitely went through, you don't have to go through all of them, but I'm
Mhm.
sure that there's one that you would go through. You have
Yeah.
denial. We definitely went through that. And some people deal with anger.
Mhm.
Some people deal with bargaining. Some people deal with depression. Some people deal with, and then at the end, you then sometimes deal with acceptance. Um,
Mhm.
most times you deal with acceptance. And then some people need a little more help where they have to go to counseling or seek therapy, so
Mhm.
that in the end they can accept what has happened and try to move on. But God allowed us to go through a process. I call it a process. He kind of prepared um, my family for the event that took place. Me and my son, we had a pet, and
Mhm.
the pet died, and we had to go through that process before, and then we end up losing a loved one after that, and we worked through that process together. And then, of course, the tragedy of losing his dad, you know we were able to um, bring in what we went through by losing
Mhm.
a pet, by losing my grandparent, and kind of talk that through now about his
Mhm.
dad. And so it made it a bit easier. It's still a hard situation, but it made it a bit easier for us to have that discussion about
Mhm.
life and death and the grief process. So yeah, that's much kind of what the book is about and that process that you go through.
Yeah, no, I like, what, that's good, that the way you talk about that, because a process, and I think most things is a process, right? Like there is some type of a process that we kind of have to go through, and being able to draw on, some past experience, and how we got through that past experience kind of helped us get through this next experience, or this time that we're going through right now. We know that we'll be able to get through it, and so that is helpful. Now that's good,
Mhm.
Kamisha. That's very insightful. How important do you think that that it is, like to have children's literature to be able to address, something like grief, because a lot of times, like you said, when it was happening to you, there wasn't anything necessarily on the shelves. And so you created something, which is great to be able to have a resource and a tool. How important do you think that is to have something, like back then? Do you think if having something would have made it a little different?
Um, yes, I think it's very important. And yes, if it was back then, I definitely would have purchased the book, and it would have been something that we would have been reading together, just talking about it, kind of working through it, talking about his dad, and just the process. I think it's so important. I think it's necessary because as children, when things happen like this, they are so they're still developing, right? So
Mhm.
they're always going to remember when something tragic happens in their lives, and you don't want that to be a bad situation or so traumatic that it negatively affects their life in the future. Some people may not even express, some children might not even express their feelings, but if you're able to talk about it and have a healthy discussion about it, they're able to express themselves to you, communicate, tell you what's
Mhm.
wrong, go through those emotions. I don't feel good today. I'm thinking about my
Mhm.
loved ones. You can talk through that. I think it's important. First, you have to choose. I call this the three C's. You have to choose, and choosing, you recognize that there was trauma or the trauma of losing someone. So
Yeah.
you recognize that that happened, right? And then
Mhm.
the second C would be connect.
Yeah.
I feel it's important to connect with other people that are looking out for your best interests.
Mhm.
So like I said, I am very active in church. So, your
Mhm.
church community, your church family, even your family and friends, it's always important to stay connected. People or surround yourself with people that love you and care
Yeah.
for you and
Yeah.
want to see the best for you. So, even with your children, they got to stay connected with you. You're always communicating and talk about it. And then the last one, of course, is communication. Just to
Yeah.
have that dialogue when they don't feel good about it, when they want to talk about the loved one, when
Mhm.
you want to do different things. Like something that helped us was going through pictures and looking at pictures of us, his dad, and we're talking about all of the happy memories that we had and everything. That's
Mhm.
really important, and I think um, a book or recognizing that this is important to incorporate in the grieving process is very much needed. It will help
Yeah.
people be able to process
Yeah.
what's happened and not hold it
Mhm.
in. And holding things in can be a detriment to your spirit, man. It
Mhm.
makes you angry. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
No, I think no. You know what, Camisha? You said you listen. I want to get into those three C's again, because I think that a lot of times when you go through something like that, just like you're saying, it is important. I say on here all the time, change is a choice, right? Like you can either choose, how you're going to approach or let a change affect you. So you do have to make, you get to choose how you're going to, what your perspective is going to be like in, dealing with the trauma, right? And so that's super important. And I'm glad that you say that. Being, we were talking about before we came on the show, like, Camisha, how do I identify you now? Are you like a grief and loss advocate, or, I know you're not like a counselor or like that, but I'm saying you're like an advocate. You're now a resource, to people. But these 3 C's, I think, is super important to share. So choosing how you handle it, and then connection, like connection is so important for everything. Like
Mhm.
you really do, because you do see people sometimes isolate, you
Yeah.
know, and I would think too, like, especially for the kids, you mentioned, like that it's important for your children to be able to connect. Because sometimes in the grieving process, you don't even, this is going to sound terrible, but sometimes you're not even thinking about the children.
No. Yeah. That's why it's so important to kind of get yourself together so that you can be there for your child. So it's really a hard process. So you
Yeah.
definitely got to get that together for yourself so that you can be able to be there for your child. Just thinking about that, you know how when we're on the airplane, they tell you to put your mask on first
Hmm.
before you help your child, but you have to get yourself together first so you can be strong and be there for your child. So yeah,
Yeah.
connection is very important.
Yeah, that is so key, girl. I'm like, you know what? I always think about, something happens to an adult, and they have kids. As a matter of fact, we were just with some family friends yesterday. They experienced a loss, and and you're not thinking about the children, how it impacts the children. And I'm like, you know what? The children, like, yeah, we
Yeah.
gotta put the mask on and make sure that the kids have what they need. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Camisha, thank you so much for saying that. Like, and being Camisha, you for real. You are the advocate here. You really are. And then like the communication. Like that's key, because sometimes people don't know what's needed without that communication,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And because how sometimes, something, a loss happens, and then you'll hear from people at the funeral, and then you don't hear nothing else, and you're in that grief process for the people who were, the family that was impacted directly. They're still going through that grieving process, and so they need some communication, certainly within themselves, and then with other people. So how, as a matter of fact, Camisha, tell us, how do people best, communicate or even connect with the family? Like this book, I think will be great. Like now I am going to take this book to a family that, if this happened, that I know that this happens to them, or someone, I'm taking the book. Like this is like, you take your box of fried chicken over there to the house, and you take this book too if they got kids. That's what I'm telling people. But how would you say, how would you recommend for people to support and to love families who have, and a child has experienced grief? How would you tell them to support the family?
Well, I would say if you have a child that has lost a loved one, and if you want to support the family, especially a young child, it's
Yeah.
important to know that because they're so young, um, we don't want to dwell on the sad situation, but instead you should focus on happy things with them. So like I said,
Mm-hmm.
we would pull out pictures
Mm-hmm.
and talk about the pictures, the happy times that we had.
Mm-hmm.
We would also kind of do fun activities, maybe that the child and the loved one used to do together, and
Okay.
talk about how good they were at this and
Yeah.
that. Um, and and then, of course, spending that quality time, going out, taking them
Mm-hmm.
out for maybe pizza or ice cream,
Mm-hmm.
or just so that they can talk and feel comfortable and feel safe. That's kind of what you want. And then, if you're trying to help maybe a parent that has gone through it and lost another parent.
Mhm.
You can even take their child out so that the mother or father can have some time to themselves, just to get a mental a mental check.
Yeah,
Because sometimes it's a hard process, period. But
yeah,
you can get the child away for a while so you can take a breather. Because, like we said, you got to take care of yourself so that you can be strong for your child. So little things like that will help the
yeah.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Like, and I think people need that because sometimes people don't know what to do, or people are waiting on sometimes the person who has experienced the loss to say, "Hey, this is what I need," and sometimes the person may not necessarily know exactly what they need, and so sometimes it's good to for somebody who's been in the situation to say, hey, here's some ideas that I can tell you would be helpful to that
Mhm.
parent or for that child. Here's some things that you can do where you don't have to wait, because a lot of times the person that has experienced it may not necessarily say, hey, can you come in and do this for me? But you can offer. So
Yeah.
it's good to have some ideas on some things that you can offer to a family. So no, I think that's great. Camisha, this is good, girl. This is good. I am so glad that you wrote this book. I'm super proud of you and so excited for you. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about you and the process and everything as you were going through. How long had you been working on this? Was this something that you just downloaded and it came to you overnight, or has it been something you've been working on for a while?
No, so let me tell you about that. So, like I said, when it happened in 2008, and I was kind of looking for a book, so that it could help me be in connection and communicate with my son, and I
Mhm.
couldn't find anything. At that time, God had placed in my heart, well, I want you to write a book.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay. So so it took a long time. That was what, like 2008, so that's like 15 years ago. But I
Hey.
God God actually, and just like God, I met in 2011. Of course, I got married and I moved to Kansas City,
Mhm.
but I met the owner of Purpose Publishers. I didn't know that she was the owner, but I think maybe in 2011, 2012 is when I found out she had a publishing company. And so when I found that out, I was like, oh, I remember when God told me to write a book. So I kind of stalked the Purpose Publishing page, kind of seeing what was needed in order to write a book, and it kind of just stayed with me. So that was kind of like in 2011, 2012. But
Wow.
in 2022, I was at church and we were having one of our community meetings, and the pastor got up and we were getting ready to close out and we were praying, and he said, I wanted to leave this with you guys. He was like, what is it that God is telling you to do that you haven't done yet?
Oh
And so I
wow.
was like, you know how when those pastors throw out those questions, then you start thinking about things in your life. So I was like, I wonder if he talking about the book. And so 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 anyway, we end up praying at the table. Everybody, because everybody has something that God to do that they haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
So we were praying about it, and of course, I was bawling and crying because I know that God told me to do this way back in 2008,
Yeah.
and so from then on, that's when I seriously started to pursue writing the book. And so,
Well,
yeah,
praise the Lord. And
took a
here in
long time.
2024, it
Yeah,
is coming out. Well, I
Yes.
am excited. Well, thank you for even entrusting Purpose Publishing to help you with the book. And I'm looking forward to seeing it materialize and on shelves and made available to the public. So you guys, you can pre-order copies of the book at www.camishawilliams.com. It is Life's Endings Bring New Beginnings. And so awesome resource and a tool for sharing grief and loss with children and helping families to deal with grief and loss. And so, Camisha, I commend you. I salute you, my
Thank
friend,
you.
on your new book. It's going to be amazing. I'm excited to see what all you are going to do and how you'll be able to help many people by sharing your testimony. Thank you for sharing with us today on the in the lab. We are excited about seeing you grow and go on to do great things with what God has gifted you with and sharing. And so, what a blessing. I feel like it's an honor to have had you here with us today. So, before you leave the lab, though, there are always ask every guest for three things that you would tell change makers when they are doing something, whether they're doing something new or they're just making change in their lives. What are three things that you would tell them to do?
The three things that I would tell a change maker to do. The first thing I would tell a change maker to do is pray. Pray
Absolutely.
so you can be led by the Spirit of God on which direction He would have you to go. The next thing I would say is to listen to what God is telling you to do. And then the third thing I would say is act on it. Act on it once He's spoken those words to you. That's for
Amen.
me.
Girl, that's for all of us. That is for all of us. That is for all of us. The no doubt, no doubt. Pray. Hey, listen, pray, listen, and act, girl. That's wisdom. That is
Mm,
wisdom. Camisha
mm,
Williams, thank you so
thank
much for
thank
coming into the lab today. It has been a blessing, my friend. Thank you so much.
thank
I am grateful, so grateful, so grateful, so grateful. Well, listen, for all of our family and friends who have tuned in today, I want to thank you for tuning into the Reimagine New Lab podcast. This has been MG, your Reimagine strategist, with the one, the only, Camisha M. Williams, who is
you.
the grief and loss advocate and new author of the book Life's Endings Bring New Beginnings. Make sure you get a copy of it today. You can tune in every Friday for a new episode. I love having you here. Thank you again for subscribing, being a part of the channel, tuning in each week to learn something new, because you know what? Change is just a choice. Thanks for tuning in. Love you all, and I'll see you next week. Mwah!